everybody, and welcome to the February 4th, 2025 meeting of the Grafton School Committee. I'm Amy Marr, the chair, calling the meeting to order. I'm going to open up the floor for public comment at this time. Do we have any public comment? We do not have public comment. Okay. So we'll move right along to general business. And tonight we have with us our town administrator, Evan Broussard. He is going to present a town budget to us. We appreciate you coming up, especially knowing that your guys are meeting downstairs, so we definitely appreciate your time, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I think this is the fourth year I've been here in a row, because I've been employed the whole time, so that's good. So I'm going to go through the slideshow. If any of you watched the Finance Committee, which I'm sure everybody was dialed right in on that, it's virtually unchanged since then. I really haven't deviated much. And so just before I start, I do want to say we're going to talk about topics like the town and the school and municipal side and all of those things. It's really hard to talk about a budget without using those words. They do not denote a difference between town and school as far as us versus them and all those things that tend to go on. So I just want to make that clear at the beginning, and if I say something that rings that way, it's unintended. Before we go too far down, we do have the full budget online in our Financial Transparency Center. The budget book is not live yet, but it will be by next week. And I recommend anybody that wants to know more about the budgeting process, go on there and take a look. We also have a tab under the town administrators page that shows every spreadsheet you could ever really want to look at. All right, so our budget priorities for this year, maintain level services, and so I requested that our department heads give a level funded budget. Maintain a competitive work environment, meaning we have to keep pace with other municipalities around us to be able to retain our talent. And continue to fund the Grafton Public Schools competitively. And so that's something that Jay and I have been working on together to try to do whatever we can with the funding that we have currently. Brief overview, we have not done a refinancing since 2021, so our budget, our bond rating remains a AA stable, which is pretty good. It's not AAA, that's where we want to be, but we do have some things in the work that I think are going to help us get there. OPEB, for people that aren't aware, is other post-employment benefits. That is the funding of health insurance and pensions for retirees into the future. We are supposed to be at $65 million. We have $750,000.
Close.
Seems horrible. When I started, it was 111. So even at 1.15%, we're pretty stoked about that. We actually hit the threshold of $500,000 that allowed us to start investing the money, which was a big change for us, which has been great. Currently in our stabilization accounts, municipal stabilization, we have $5.1 million-ish, about $4.4 million in free cash, which represents current fiscal reserves of about 11% of the operating budget. You'll see this is just our tax levy, so this only takes into account the levy, the increase from Prop 2.5, and our new growth, which we set the new growth number. We've set it at 923. Historically, since I've been here, I believe we've been at about 800,000, but we have been trending upward, and you'll see that, I believe, on the next slide after this. This is just the excess capacity from the previous override, and this is how we've been kind of keeping track of it throughout the years of how much we used. I think I've talked to this group before about the concept of how it's been used. It's an interesting concept. It really just speaks to capacity, and we can represent that in a number of ways. I think that through my conversations with Jay over the years, we developed pretty much this is how we're going to demonstrate it, and we were able to get through fiscal 25 and on to 26 with $0. This shows our new growth trends back to 2015, so a 10-year trend. You can see 2025 was our highest year. We're at $1.26 million, and you'll see we pegged our new growth this year to 2024. That's pretty close to how we believe you should be running a municipal budget. We do have a little bit of wiggle room if we can see things on the horizon that will bring in more new growth. But we generally go 2 fiscal years back and look at what that number was to help us get past the trending. Okay, so I'm going to show you 2 different budgets. One is the operational budget as requested, and one is the operating budget as I have to develop and deliver to the Finance Committee, which needs to be balanced. So as requested, you'll see that overall, we have about a 6.27% increase. And a large portion of that increase is driven by our, at least on the municipal side of the house, by the unclassified category. It's called unclassified because that's what the accountants call it, but it's really, that's where all your pensions, Medicaid, FICA, health insurance, all of that lives. I also want to point out that we have BVT at an 8%. That's just our estimated number that we plugged in there, and it could obviously vary. We don't know yet. Everything else is pretty straightforward. So at the requested budget level, we have a deficit of about $1.6 million to make up. So on to the budget as I proposed it to FinCom. You will see that the school department, which is what you're most interested in, went from 6.8% to 3.4% increase. And there are some other minor adjustments throughout that. The one area that is just really hard to change is those unclassifieds. Again, I have this out of order. I have a flow when I talk, and it's not how I develop my PowerPoint. But we're going to talk about unclassifieds in a minute, and I'm going to go into some detail on that. This is how we approach the budget division when we first start. So what we do is we look at how much we're going to have in new growth and we're in Prop 2.5, and we split that 60-40. And we use that as a projection to be able to have the conversation with Dr. Cummings and his financial people and our financial people on our side of the house to at least have a starting point of where we can target to be. And then it's going to be a nuanced discussion to get to the end. So our Prop 2.5 was, 1.3 million. We've pegged our new growth at 920,000. So a 60-40 split would be 1.35 to the schools and 900 to the town side of the house. In actuality, as the budget sits right now, we're at 1.5 for the schools and 700 for the town. And I'm going to talk about why that happens that way. And it's not going to be on this slide. It's going to be on the slide after this. So I got some work to do, apparently. At FinCom, it went real smooth. Everything I ended with is what the next slide was. This one, I'm 2 steps ahead. These are the environmental increases that I talked about that are in the unclassified category. And so what you'll see is the town's general insurance is a 2% increase. They're generally a pretty reasonable jump. Our retirement and pension continues to trend about 9% to 10%, so we're at 9.7 for that. Our Medicare and FICA is about a 25% change from years past. Health insurance is represented as a 10% here. However, we're told to expect a 15%. And so what we did was move other funding around in the budget when we level funded items and decreased some lines to get us some extra capacity in the health insurance bucket. So we're only forecasting in this presentation a 10%. It's really a 15%. And funny story, the original quote we got for new health insurance was 28.7%. We then went out to bid and got a second quote for 28.5%. So what that should tell you is that probably over the next 2 to 3 fiscal years, we're going to see a total increase of around 30% or higher, because we are probably underfunded in that category, and health insurance in general this year, a lot of towns are seeing big hits. Like 10, 12% is a good number this year, which is outrageous. Okay, sanitation is a 2.7% increase. I told you about BVT already. So that one line increases about 9.2%. That's our unclassified line. So what does that do? And this is on our budget and the municipal side. So we started looking at that increase of 700,000. We had an additional $1.2 million of uncontrolled increases that are truly uncontrolled. They're not things that we have a lot of choice. The market dictates what those are going to be. So we started budgeting our side at negative $500,000, essentially. And so this always is an interesting point to discuss with the school committee, because how do we make up that $500,000? So the interesting thing with the municipal side of the budget is we have other revenues, bank fees, bank interest, bag fees for the trash collection system, right? Everybody loves that. All of those things change over time. Those are other revenues that get factored in to cover other service segment costs. So while we talk about new growth and Prop 2.5, there's a whole bunch of other revenue things. And again, you can go through that spreadsheet on the website, and it'll show you, everything down to the marijuana revenue, which is nothing, and meals tax and things like that. So as I just went over, that budget shows a deficit of $26,000, which in an $85 million budget is balanced. It's about, it's perfectly fine to leave it there. We're leaving it there for now because we don't know all these other factors that are going to come through with state funding and everything else. So that number is going to go up and down for the next 3 months by probably smaller increments. So we're not going to try to get to zero today. This is something I also like to bring people's attention to. So this graph, by the end of the budget process, will be filled out all the way to the right-hand side. But it shows you kind of what we go through. So we started with initial submissions we were about a negative 2.1 million. I then presented to the select board at 1.7 million in deficit. The governor's numbers came out and gave us a little bit better, got us to 1.65. And then here we are at, the negative $26,000 mark. And that number that graph will go, like I said, all the way out to the right by the time I'm done giving budget presentations, which will be in a couple months here. All right, so changes to expenses that we have. I talked to you about the contributions for health insurance and for retirement. We've talked about BVT. All of this includes a 2% COLA across the board with the exception of one union. So the way that the town has structured its union contracts, it's a whole different setup than what the schools have, is that we are 2%, 2%, and 3% in varying orders. So we have 3 unions. One will be a 3% this year, one will be a 3% next year, and one will be a 3% the year after. So that's how that works. So that's the only outlier from the
You have
2%.
3 unions?
We have 3 unions.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. I had to think about that for a second. Yes, we have library, administrative union, and police union.
Got it, thank you.
All right. And energy, I leave it on here because it seems every year we have an energy problem, but this year, knock on wood, we're looking pretty good. We have gas and electric contracts that aren't up this year, so we're pretty stable. From the general government line, we're removing 2 part-time positions. From public safety, we have moved the cruisers into the capital plan. That takes some of the pressure off the operating budget. And on the police department side, rather than fill the 25th officer position, and the deputy chief position, we are leaving deputy chief open, and we've instead created 2 lieutenants. So that did stabilize that part of the budget. There are some contractual increases because, of course, this was a negotiation year for the police. Schools, I always just defer to superintendent. Public Works, we have an increase due to MS4 stormwater permitting. That is a federal requirement that we've been working on. It is a lot of money. I moved some of that I could into one-time costs in the capital budget to try to, again, relieve pressure on the operating budget. Highway, there's some minor adjustments. They're just training and paving relating. So what are we doing cost savings and revenue-wise? So we continue to apply for grants, as does the school department. Fiscal '24, we brought in about 1.3, almost $1.4 million. We are halfway through fiscal '25, and we're up to about 960,000 so far. So I would anticipate we're going to end up somewhere in that $1.4 million range. And then this is just something that we're gonna go a little bit into detail on this in a little bit. But for those who don't know, in Grafton, municipal solid waste is funded by bag fees, but bag fees only cover 50% of the program. The other 600,000 to 650,000 lives in the operating budget that I just presented to you. And so we're having a conversation with the Finance Committee and the Select Board about creating an enterprise fund. An enterprise fund is just fee for service. So if you use the service, you pay for the fee, and if you don't, you don't pay. Right now, there are folks in Grafton that don't have trash that are paying for trash removal. So some things to consider as we move on a little bit farther. It's only that, I gotta change that. It's now February. Last week when I did this, it was still January. We still don't have solid numbers on a lot of these things, especially on the revenue side. Health insurance doesn't become finite until February. And we know that Chapter 70 can be a major driver depending on how that formula plays out. I don't see anything crazy, especially given the governor's initial budget, which is, as I describe it here, anemic. So I'm going to talk about 4 different paths forward because I think we have some options, and these are things that we're going to be discussing, especially with the Finance Committee and the Select Board about how to move forward. And I'm assuming that you all will have to be a part of that conversation because there are some big impacts to the school. So scenario 1 is just using free cash stabilization and overall reductions. So we would reduce the budget by, say, 500 to 700K, and then we could use free cash and stabilization to the tune of about $1 million. The pros to that is that we're not talking about an override. That's positive just in general. The cons to that is that we're essentially betting that new growth is going to be such that it covers that gap because that hole's still going to be there next year, right? That hole will be there because we're using one-time revenue to close that hole. And we could have a potential larger shortfall in the next fiscal year. That is not the preferred scenario, but I try to give all the scenarios when I do when I work on a budget and I work with the Finance Committee and everyone. Step 2 is determine what the override is, what that gap would need to be, right? And then that's the money we ask for in the form of an override. So it fills the gap, it raises the levy forever. The cons are, obviously, it's an override. Nobody likes that. It's just how that works. And it potentially, keeps that gap alive. We would be probably having that conversation. If we did a 5-year override, you're going to be talking about an override again 5 years from now because that deficit doesn't close. Scenario 2.5, this is to change the municipal solid waste to an enterprise fund in which we would redirect $600,000 back into the general fund. It closes the gap for necessary reductions. However, a lot of people, I've seen this happen in other communities that are used to it being a certain way, they see this as an additional tax, even though they're already paying it because their tax rate's not going to go, their taxes aren't going to go down. They're just now going to have a trash fee. That's really why best practice is when you start a curbside collection program, you don't do it this way. That's why the enterprise fund exists. But this is the world we live in. And lastly, which is how it was just proposed, is just reductions. So it adjusts Grafton, and I did get some feedback in the Finance Committee. We don't like the word adjusts. We have different words. I still think it still holds to what we're doing. We would be living within the constraints of Prop 2.5 and new growth. The cons to that are major service disruptions and loss of staff. That's all I have on the operating budget. Would you like to talk about that, or would you like to go straight into capital?
Other questions from the committee? Rebecca?
Can you go back to the 2.5,
Sure.
the scenario 2.5? Thank you. I just wanted to read that
Okay.
again for a second. I don't even know if I have a question. So we would not need an override with this change. Is that correct?
You would not need, well, not in this. So let me give one other caveat.
Thank you.
The answer is probably part of every single one of those slides I just talked about. I tried to break them apart into chunks so that we could at least have a reference point to start a conversation about this is what we like and this is what we don't like. And I think it fosters the conversation that people aren't even thinking about some of these other things. So scenario 2.5 is, let's just get that 600,000 out of there, which brings our shortfall to say $1 million, and then we fund that some other way, right? So maybe it's a combination of some one-time revenue of things that we think can reasonably be anticipated, some reductions, it's probably in all of the above.
Okay. That's what I was kind of like at 600,000, and that's not as much as we're shortfall. So I just wanted to make sure I was
Right,
understanding.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, it's probably all of those things,
Okay.
just trying to make it manageable.
I didn't see who was first, but go ahead, Leora.
After you.
But these are all one-year scenarios, right? Like, we're kind of kicking a can down a
Yep.
road, correct?
To some extent, yep.
Okay.
If you look, and I don't know, Dr. Cummings, what numbers you had used at your last presentation, but if they're the same revenue projections and five-year forecast that we saw, you're at, if spending continues at its current level, you're negative almost $9 million-ish, $8 million and change in year 5, with no other. And that's with no other intervention, right? That's just, we've made no changes. This is just what we thought we would, this is what we'd like to see. That's where we end up. So is that the real number at year 5? Maybe not. Maybe it's got a little bit of a curve, a slower slope down into the deficit area, but it's definitely in the deficit area.
Did you?
Yeah, well, it was pretty much what Leora said, but just to kind of, when you're trying to help craft the story, Evan, a little bit.
Yes.
On slide scenario 2 with override, that bullet where it potentially reinforces the need for subsequent overrides.
Yes.
That bullet concerns me when you talk about it, because I still think there's a disconnect that right now, as we are as a town, we are dependent on overrides to keep level services. So, and again, talking about kicking the can down the road with scenario 3, current reductions, we make current reductions this year, that doesn't actually solve our issues for next year, which I think you just kind of said to Jay. So just thinking about when you're telling the story, I don't know. I don't love that bullet about potentially reinforces the need for subsequent overrides. Like, yep, on any of these slides, you could say we're override dependent until something drastically changes. So we either, eventually we're going to need an override, or we're not going to have functional schools. I'll say
Okay,
that
so-
now without seeing what Jay has to present.
Okay.
And that's been our story since
years.
2016.
Yep.
Yeah.
We've been trying to tell that story, that we've become an override-dependent community, and there are many of us out there
Yeah.
that, you can only cut so far. And we talked about the fiscal cliff repeatedly. And I think that, yes, this does reinforce the need, because that's what we're at, that's what we are. We're override dependent. Maybe that's what that needs to say, is that we continue to be override dependent. That's part of our story. It's been in every budget Jay has done since 2016 at least. But that's the situation until, state funding of schools improves somehow. And I don't know. I don't know what else, I don't know what else the town could do at this point. I don't think there's really anything. It's all about how we're funded. And that's the story. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just feedback when you're telling the story or something, but thank you.
Okay.
for all
No,
that.
no,
Appreciate it, yeah.
that's fair.
Yeah.
Anybody
Thanks,
else? Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
I just had a question. So I know with the override that would have to be voted on at town meeting, do all of these other individual solutions or like solves, would they all have to be voted on individually?
No, that's an excellent question. So what will happen is between the finance committee, the select board, and the school committee, we will craft the final budget and bring that to town meeting floor. Now, what has happened in Grafton in the past is they've developed essentially two budgets. One is a budget that is, if the override fails, this is what the budget is. The second budget is what they call a contingent budget, which is, these are all the things that we will do contingent upon passing the override. So that's generally the safest way to do it, because if it all fails at town meeting, then you don't have a funded budget for any of it, and that we can't have that happen.
Can the second budget also fail if people don't want that?
Yep, sure can. So if people voted, so what we would do is we'd have the regular budget, which generally goes through town meeting pretty quick. It's a large number. It's hard to wrap your head around if you haven't been to all the different meetings. It's a big process. They could vote yes on the regular budget, town meeting could, and then no on the contingent budget. That could happen. They could vote no on the override. The override is a two-part thing. It goes through town meeting and then it gets put on the ballot. So,
Yeah, thank you.
good? Okay.
Anything else? Okay. Thank
All right,
you.
we're going to move on to capital. This capital plan looks a little different than I've presented in years past because I'm doing it the way that I was taught to do it now, which is you put everything in there and then you assign different funding sources as you go. That's not historically how Grafton did it, but that's really what a 5-year capital plan should include. So this entire capital breakdown is about just shy of $4.5 million. However, when we get to the funding slide, you will see that 1.4 million of that is borrowing, and 278,000, I believe it is from CPC. So if you removed, as I just said, the borrowing and the CPC, the capital plan is about $2.8 million all told. And there are some new additions in there. Some of that cost is driven, it's a slight increase, is driven by us moving things out of the operational budget into the capital budget. So it's really just moving money around. And then some of it is a new way that we're funding OPEB, and we'll talk about that when we get to that slide. You've seen all the different school requests. We have on the town side, Cemetery and Parks Department needs a storage building down at Fairview, and that is to put their equipment indoors. As time has gone on and equipment has gotten larger, the original garages to those properties don't really cut it anymore. We have a municipal software upgrade for this building. It's $80,000. So we are starting to get a failure rate here, and it's partly driven by the fact that the software is about 4 versions out of date, and they won't even remote into the system anymore. Police department has a UPS. That's a battery backup for the building, apparently. Not apparently, essentially. I do know apparently what it is. Fire station is looking for some storage stuff, and this is Fire Station 3. This is a second batch of funding. We did 2 years at Station 2 at $100,000 each, and now we're doing 2 years at Station 3 at $100,000 each. If you haven't been in Station 2 or 3 before we started this, it was like walking right into 1968. It was nothing had changed. And so we've done new HVAC, new lighting, new kitchen and break areas and things like that. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I think all of this is actually going to shift out of here, with the exception of the Ferry Street playground replacement and the pour-in-place surfacing. So that's a total project cost of $378,000. Only $100,000 of it lives in the capital budget. The other $278,000 we're going to request out of CPC. This is the truck page. So we've got a cemetery truck. I don't know if anybody's ever seen it. I don't know why you would take notice of it if you didn't do like what I do, but there's a truck that drives around with this little clamshell on it, and they open up the sewer drains or the stormwater drains, and the clamshell goes in, and they pull up all the junk out of it. That truck is older than I am, which is now becoming quite old. So we need to replace that, and we're working on that process right now. Engine one, we've already replaced. That's part of the capital payment plan of leasing. We need we replace a existing six-wheel dump. Cruiser replacements, 2 cruisers are now $140,000. And engine two, which is borrowing, is $1.4 million. The one caveat to engine two is that we will order that truck after town meeting if the borrowing gets approved, and we won't see it for a minimum of 48 months. So that's why we're doing it now. It needs to be replaced desperately, but we're also trying to get in the queue on some of these trucks because it takes just so very long. Other equipment that doesn't kind of fit in those categories, this is the Flock LPR camera project. This is essentially LPR is license plate reader. So they're small cameras that sit on the side of the road and log license plates. And so what we use that for is, one, it supplements a little bit of the workforce that you have out there, but it also links with other municipalities that are putting out bolos and looking for people and trying to just know where people are. It's very useful in missing children, silver alerts, amber alerts, all of those things. Because when you have 3 people on the road and you're trying to do an amber alert, it's really nice to know who's crossing your borders from where. Taser program, this is just an ongoing program that we do. Suppressed patrol rifles, so this is quieter patrol rifles. Every cruiser has a patrol rifle when an officer is on duty. If you've ever shot a AR platform, which is what those are, they are extremely loud, especially if you're in a building or up against a car using that for cover. And so what departments are seeing is that there are higher and higher incidents of hearing loss for officers that do need to deploy their service rifle. And so we are looking to do suppressed rifles, which greatly decrease the sound. Knox security key apparatus mounts. This is essentially putting Knox box keys in every fire truck that we have, instead of having giant key rings full of keys that people have trouble figuring out how to get into places. So that's a pretty good upgrade. At the bottom is the MS4 that I talked about. That's our stormwater compliance for the federal government. OPEB funding. So we've put into the capital plan the $300,000 to go to OPEB. And we did that because we did an actuarial study reviewing what we needed to be contributing to OPEB. And so this does 2 things for us. One, it helps us with our bond rating because we're actually funding OPEB at the level that we should be. The other thing this does is that if we fund this at the rate that we have here, which it ticks up every year for the next, I believe it's 10 years till 2035, it winds up capping out around $400,000. We will save $20 million on our OPEB expenses. And so that seems like a very big number to ignore and just keep kicking that can down the road. So we are going to try our level best to utilize our capital funding, which has been historically high of late, and try to stay on track with OPEB and get ourselves in a good position for when the Worcester County retirement system is fully funded, which is, I think, 2035, which coincides with where we're going. So that's a new addition. That obviously pumps up the capital plan number. But Mary and I both think that that's a very good investment for the taxpayer. So I think that's all I have for capital. Yep, that's it.
Questions, comments, thoughts? Can you talk a little bit about the roof inspections?
Yes, so this is something that William and I started working with Frank Rothwell on. So we were able to get a company that does roof inspections at zero cost. We thought it was scamish, but we talked to municipalities in the local area, and all have had really great results working with this company. We also were able to secure a $10,000 grant to do thermal imaging of roofs. So I believe we're doing the high school, middle school, and then the municipal center, and maybe the fire department, as I think what we landed on. It was a jigsaw puzzle of all the different buildings and which ones would fit inside $10,000 because they all have a different amount. And so what that amounts to essentially is they're going to fly a thermal drone back and forth across the roof and come up with a composite model that shows us where we're losing energy or may have potential leaks that you can't see with the naked eye. So that's what we're gonna do.
That sounds good.
I tried to get them to let me buy a thermal drone, and they just I got
So you
all
can't
kinds
just
of
do it
pushback.
yourself?
I think I could.
It'd be
but
cheaper.
Maybe you could make some calls on my behalf.
Just need a thermal camera.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions?
Just
Go ahead.
No question, just thank you, Evan. I know this is a lot of work. I appreciate you coming up to talk to us. I think I just want to keep the conversations open and not have us all be in our silos. I know I'm chair of the TRICOM, so I will be getting a meeting together where we can kind of talk. I know there were some initial discussions from your board 2 weeks ago when they just saw this number, but I want to caution everybody that nobody has had complete information yet. So when people are panicking or making statements, we're just, I think, processing as we get it. So maybe you can just pass along to them that we'll be in touch so they
Yes.
can have all the information before they make decisions.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I
Yep.
appreciate. I know it's hard. It's not easy. So thanks for your work and your transparency. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. We do appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Say hi to the folks downstairs for us, and we'll be seeing them
What time
soon.
is it? Oh, I gotta go find something to do for another camera.
Hey, you're welcome to hang out and watch the next part.
Probably helpful.
I think you're gonna do budget stuff, right? Yeah. I'm gonna stay for that.
Yeah,
I think
great.
that's smart.
All right. Now Jay is going to talk about a reduction budget.
All right, so tonight I'm going to start laying the groundwork for the creation of a reduction budget that obviously ties in to exactly what Evan just spoke to. So for the last, it feels like 6 months, we've been talking about a level service budget. Now we're going to shift, at least short term, to that reduction budget. Evan talked about with more detail basically those three boxes, if you will. In the middle, he broke it up a couple different ways, but override, that use of stabilization or some other funding, the solid waste piece, something to help bridge the gap, and no override. So tonight, I am going to just start framing that no override piece with the goal of, I'm expecting maybe in March, we'd have a budget presented, and then if state funding comes in, if any of those ifs actually come to fruition, we could obviously take things off that reduction plan. So our costs are going to continue to go up. We've been talking about this for months. And with that, we're unfortunately stuck in this place that we talked about. I think, Amy, you mentioned that inadequate state funding, where out of 219 districts in the state of Massachusetts, 319, sorry, we are 11th from the lowest in terms of funding. That's a huge gap for us. I've said it a million times. The return on investment in Grafton surpasses any district I'm aware of. Like, it just does. But when that's threatened, we just don't have fat on the bone that we can have 3 years of reductions and not feel the pain. We're going to feel it pretty much immediately. Here is just an extension of what we've looked at about a dozen times, where that anticipated funding up top, the school need that's shifted when we moved from the original forecast that Evan was talking about, where we were looking at like 6 to 8 million over a 5-year time span. As you'll recall, we had Pat Collins come in and do that forecasting with us, where he was looking at it not by individual. He wasn't looking at all 500 employees. He was building in percentages, giving us kind of his best guess. At that time, we hadn't settled with any of our units either. So in that time, we've settled with the units. With Pat helping us, we went back and we looked at every one of the 500 plus employees we have to see how that plays out. Obviously, it gets speculative eventually because the contracts are 3-year contracts. So we had, applied our best thinking. So that cumulative deficit, which you'll see in that third row, is about 3.7 million over the next 5 years. When we look at the annual deficit, the schools are expected to absorb, if you will, about 1.5 out of the $1.7 million deficit that Evan spoke about in 26. That's followed by 27, another million. As I'll talk to, if we make all those reductions that we're going to start to talk about and go in more deep detail at the end of February, you could indeed probably, you'd be in the ballpark of surviving after that. But realize we're talking about a reduction from what we have now of about 36 staff members. That's a lot of staff members. You're talking about significantly increased class sizes, 2 and up, with impacts on programming. Like, you have kind of fallen apart by FY28. Not kind of, you have. I'll jump ahead just to show you what else happens. So when districts do fall apart, and it won't be immediate, but if we don't figure it out or decide that we want to provide less than what we consider level services, this is what's going to happen. Again, you've heard me talk about it a million times, but it won't happen next year. We're still, even with 1.5 in reductions in class sizes going up, programs being reduced, we're still better off than some area districts that send us students and we bring in, we have a list a mile long, and we bring in about $850,000 a year that helps pay for salaries. So school choice has been fantastic for us. But once we have large class sizes, not enough supports, you cut 36 people, you're there. We just don't have enough people to maintain what we're doing now. So we, instead of somebody driving over twice a day to drop off and pick up your kids, and a lot of work goes into school choice, they're better off staying put. When we have fewer supports and larger class sizes, we're going to have an increase in out-of-district placements. Right now, we have one of the lowest rates in Central Mass, if not the lowest, with about 31 students out of over 3,000 kids being serviced out of district. So that's when everything compounds, and you see it locally. So hopefully we avoid that, but this gives you basically the picture of what we're looking at. So when we look at 1.5 million, we are by and large a people organization. Over 80% of our expenses are for people. So the majority is going to be a reduction in staffing. We are looking at just about every area of staffing that we have for reductions. We're trying to make it as balanced as we can. Anytime we have to look at reductions, I always want to maintain the pre-K through 2 in particular, that core where students are learning how to read. They're just starting off, obviously, in the Grafton schools. We want to keep that as intact as possible and maintain that core. I touched on maximizing the balance. We have a few retirements, and we know already of some people who are going to resign at the end of the year, moving out of state, et cetera. So anytime we can capitalize on that and not have to pay unemployment, that's a good thing. The fewer people we have to actually let go, the better. And I always, for 14 years, when we've been facing reductions, anything that we talk about and actually put forward, we want to actually do. I've been in districts where they say, oh my gosh, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and then they don't, they do something else. I'm hoping that we do exactly what we say we're going to do. We've, as Evan, I think might have talked about, last year we spent out what we had for reserves. It was 1.2 million in revolvers that we just put everything we had into getting us through last year, the 5th year post override. And so our increase this year is at 6.8%. Let's pretend instead of us having to put one-time monies in there, if that was from the town, our actual increase from that number would be 3.9%, rather than 6.8% for next year. But I'm glad we did it, but we're still facing that ongoing cliff or that hole in our funding. I want to definitely avoid tech shortfall. I've been in districts where when faced with cuts, they go to technology, especially hardware. That's an easy one to go to on the short term. And I think actually when I started, Grafton was kind of tech poor. We always had broken equipment, taking loaners. It was just kind of a mess. And over the years, Neil and others have worked really hard to get us out of that and get us up to speed. I don't want to fall into where we stand townwide in terms of facilities and capital. Like, we're always just chasing. We're doing the best we can, but once you fall behind, it's very, very, very hard to catch up. So we're going to cut from tech, but I want to be very careful about it. And I touched on prioritizing the core, what's required, what's essential, and making sure that we're doing all those things as well as we can for as long as we can. This is an oldie but goodie document from the first override, and as we face more limited funding, this is what happens. It's not going to be in exact order, but by and large, this document has served us incredibly well, where we'll see increased class sizes, grades 4 through 12, some reduction of electives, and certainly program reductions, and then it just, obviously, it grows. You can't go to that well, the same exact well next year. You have to go down into the lower elementary, take out more from GHS, GMS in terms of programs, electives. We may look at clubs, sports. Hopefully none of it comes to that, but you've heard all of these with other districts. This is what happens. It's not unique to Grafton. I touched on this one earlier, but that loss of school choice funding and the increase in out-of-district placements, if it comes to that, that's going to be a real challenge. So in terms of big picture, what we're looking at, and this is with the permission or direction of the committee, I'll get to a timeline, but at the next meeting would put before the committee a more detailed plan of what I would recommend for reductions to close that $1.5 million gap. Operations and maintenance, so basically the non-people side of things, any educational apps that we're not dependent on, curriculum materials, decrease professional development, further reduce building supplies. The last two, we really can't afford to decrease our buildings and grounds budget any further. We do need to pay our utilities, but we would purposefully utilize school choice money to pay for those and give us some relief in the general budget. That leaves about $1.3 million to be addressed. And assuming about $18,000 for actual unemployment, that would add another $200,000 to be accounted for. Again, we're looking at all groups and maximizing resignations, retirements. We want to minimize job loss on the human side, but certainly on the unemployment side as well. We've started, Mandy primarily has started wrestling with bumping. For those who are in units, which is almost our entire staff, if there's a given position that we are slating to have that be reduced, depending on certification and years of service, that individual may very well bump another person. typically a newer person with less experience. So we're trying to figure all that out. It's always messy and complex, and you have to do it very thoughtfully so you're not having conversations with people when it really isn't him or her, it's someone else. So we're working on that. I've had time to go through, apply my best thinking to what I would recommend. My first draft has us at 21.3 FTE. Some of that includes, there are 3 positions that were requested. So they were in the original level service budget. They weren't nice to haves, but as you know, not every grade has the same number of students, and we can move people around, but we just don't have enough economy of scale to balance it exceptionally well like you would in a very large district. So we had, I think, 2 new 5th grade teachers, and maybe it was a 4th grade, just to maintain class sizes of around 23. So we take those off, for example. In the end, after restructuring, taking advantage of known resignations and retirements, I think we're going to have, based on my first draft, 10 people, 10 positions qualifying for unemployment. Timeline and next steps, obviously
Can you go-
tonight. Yep.
I'm sorry, can you go back
Sure.
to that slide? Is that okay? I'm sorry, Amy.
Okay.
Wait, why would we only have, what am I missed something. Why would we only have 10 qualifying? Wouldn't they all qualify for unemployment?
If they resign.
No.
Resignation.
Somebody
I
resigns
missed
or
that because I was thinking
retires.
about something else. I'm sorry.
While we're sitting on this slide, can I just ask a question? You
Of
said
course.
3 positions that were requested in the original budget.
Correct.
So I mean, they're all real people, but the actual number of people is 18.3 FTE, correct? In terms of people who currently work for us.
Correct. Yep.
18.3 full-time equivalents.
Yep, I think it was just those 3.
All right.
And in my, well.
That does matter to some people, so I want to make sure it's clear.
That's why I'm starting to speak to
Yep.
it, but I put it in a different color. It's a real thing, and
Yes.
we need it to be level service. If we
Yes.
didn't have those 3 and had everything else, they'd have class sizes of
We're
27 or 28.
we're already going to be 3 below level service, and we're talking about 18.3
Right.
additional.
And I maintain like the ELL positions. We just legally, we're hanging on with what we have to cover those needs that we're obligated to provide. And that number seems to grow every week.
You'd think the amount we get from the state would also grow every week, wouldn't you?
Does a little, but it's just not enough. So obviously, tonight, starting the process, putting out staff communication tomorrow, just trying to keep everybody on the same basic page. End of this week and next week, leading up to vacation week, we want to have discussions with anybody who's going to be impacted. It's a very preliminary discussion, but we don't want anybody on February 26th or watching on the 25th to say, oh, that's my job, and to be panicked. That's just not fair. It's not transparent. So we'll have those discussions before vacation, share that reduction plan, take feedback, further modify it, and then from there, it'll be at the discretion of the committee how to move forward. I'll put it in a way that's more or less, based on my best thinking, prioritized, thinking if funding increases, however that is, this is what we would put back. And next steps, I think I've talked about everything at the top, waiting on state funding, that's going to take months. I'm assuming the committee's going to want me to update, basically reassess where we stand with fees, how we compare to area districts, and have that discussion. But that's my best thinking about next steps. I think that's maybe all I have. Yep.
Questions from the committee? Go ahead, Christie.
Dr. Cummings, can you go back to slide 6?
Let me tell, I don't know. This, you look up there.
No, like you have the thing in front of you, right? Like,
Yeah, it doesn't have a single number on
oh,
it.
it doesn't have the town 5-year forecast.
This one.
Yeah. So the anticipated funding, that's just from the town. What happens with the revenue that we received for grants, out-of-district tuition. Where's that?
That's total.
Nope, this is just from the town,
Yep.
anticipated funding.
So, oh, that's a very lovely question. Look at this. Huh. Okay, so this is, all of this stuff is included when we look at per pupil, everything's in there. And that's not just for us, insurance, everything under this, anything basically that impacts kids is utilized for that. When we go through the budget process, and I don't know of a district that does it otherwise, we focus on local aid in Chapter 70. It's really that back and forth, not, I guess, as a town, I shouldn't say back and forth, to figure out where we're going to settle in terms of local aid. Chapter 70 is in addition to local aid, but we don't have any say over Chapter 70. The one piece that we do have a say over is local aid. So everything else is captured in the book, circuit, but they're all, with the exception of choice, everything is super specific in terms of what it can be utilized for. There's a little variation every summer in terms of how much you bring in. Obviously, federal grants, they're slated to go down for us, I think, by 60,000. It's not a deal breaker either way. I've never experienced any tremendous cut nor a tremendous increase in that. Choice right now has been it's always been super stable for us in the future. If that goes down, that's going to have a negative impact on the general budget in that all of the salaries we pay out of choice we now have to get absorbed into the general budget. That's that compounding piece I was talking about. Preschool, that goes into preschool salaries, and those salaries are obviously all of this stuff helps offset what we're spending in the general budget. Revolvers.
So wait,
Yeah.
go back to slide 6. Now you know what it is. Yeah. The school need is 48 million total, correct? Or are you telling me that the school need is 48 million plus that other 4 million?
We need 48 million from the general fund.
I
We
guess my
need-
question, all right, if we looked back at FY24, what was the total expenditure for the school, total? I don't want to see this versus that. I want to see.
Off the top of my head, it's
Well-
right now it's about 4 million in addition.
It's in 4 million in addition. So when these numbers are presented in the budget book, then of this is the actual, this is the actual, this is the actual, and it comes to, if we look in FY24, for instance, it came to 43 million. You're telling me it's 43 million plus another 4 million?
Correct.
So what are these? It's very difficult then to understand where that money, why can't I see the full actuals?
Right, and I think today when we met, you gave me a form.
Yes, I did.
From Weston. It was about, I don't know how many hours ago. It wasn't long ago. And I said I was going to talk to our finance director and see if we could replicate that for you. And I would share that once we're done. Granted, it hasn't been 12
I understand.
hours.
No, I
We would do
understand.
that and share it.
No, okay, it just doesn't make sense to me, the numbers that I'm seeing in the budget book then, if that's not accurate.
There's
Accurate.
nothing on the right, in terms of offsets, that's not in the book. And what I heard you say today, there's a piece on every single piece of this is in there. That's just a fact. But what I heard you say today is you wanted it presented the way, I think it was Weston presented
Well,
it.
the way,
And we can replicate that, and I already talked to Kathleen about doing that.
it's just hard to understand because, as we spoke today, you're showing a revenue, let's say in FY25 of 49 million, but your budget was 45 million. And I understand that that's a $4 million difference.
So that 4 million, we pay other salaries, we pay,
Where is the accounting for that, though?
we can get you any accounting you want.
Okay.
Quite a bit of it is in the book, I believe.
We know that I've gone through the book, right?
Yes, but
Okay.
I don't think it's going to be helpful.
Yeah, Rebecca.
Can you go back to that slide, whatever number?
I'll put numbers
Slide
next time.
6, I don't know what it is. That one. Can you explain what the asterisks are? And I guess my other question is, like, the anticipated deficit is obviously significantly less in those subsequent years. Is that because we're assuming we've cut all of these salaries already, or
No.
what's happening there?
We're still, on the front end, we're still trying to basically catch up from that hole that we filled last year that we just can't get over that hurdle.
Okay.
That's the big
Once the
piece.
hole is level, then,
Then you're, okay, or, and I'm not saying that we're planning to do this, or districts don't fill that hole and they just maintain. The asterisk was put there by me just to remind myself to talk about this part.
okay.
That you could look at it and say, we're golden here.
Right, will be great
But
if
if
we
you
get
don't
over
fill
the-
that hole,
Right,
you're not golden and
right.
you're stuck there. And that's essentially, at some point, that's what the town has to decide,
Right.
what they want from the schools. And it might be somewhere in the middle, it might be better, I don't know.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you,
All
Jim.
right.
Thank you for all your work on this.
Yeah, and Kathleen.
And Kathleen,
Oh,
of course.
wait, sorry, I had another question. Sorry, I just noticed that I had written it down.
Okay.
Is that okay? Dr. Cummings, so when you were talking about reducing operating by 200,000,
Yeah.
this year, you're asking for an increase in operating of 9%. Typically, in the past, according to the numbers in the budget book, it's gone from other years, FY '23 to FY '24 was 2.49%, then 5%. Now we're up to 9%. If you cut off the 200,000, you're still going to be at 6%. That's still much higher than we see the actuals trending, even with the 11% added in for transportation costs.
Okay.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to give like a,
I'm really sorry that I asked after.
that's okay. So are you asking for overspending?
I'm asking the
That would
reasoning
indicate-
behind the 9% increase in operating from FY '25 to FY '26.
Okay, so you want a breakdown of
No, I
that?
have why is it going up so much higher than in past years?
I'd have
Percentage.
to, I'd have to look at it, and on the 25th, I can speak to each individual piece.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you again, Jay. The next item on the agenda is a CPAC representative. At our last meeting, members of the CPAC came and presented to us, and they mentioned the idea, which we have talked about in the past, of having a school committee member elected by the committee to represent the committee, mostly at their meetings, and to kind of be a liaison. And this is not somebody that I would anticipate would have any power. Sorry, Leora. I know you want it.
I'm a
But basically, just,
power-hungry woman.
I look at it as kind of like an ambassador. It says representative, but I always think of these things as
Or
ambassadors.
a liaison.
A liaison. We can call it whatever we want. We really can. We can.
Can we call it the Grand Poobah?
I vote no. So I think if we do this, I think that what I would say we need to do is make sure that at some point there's a paragraph that's written that has the responsibilities of this position that goes in our file, so that next year, and this would be an annual reappointment type thing. So we would do this again, I think, when the committee reorganizes each year. Maybe we make this the first job of the person that we elect to create that paragraph and send it to the committee. And then, Leora.
Maybe not.
Is the committee in general agreement? Okay.
Yeah.
I will take a nomination or two for this position of CPAC liaison.
I'd like to nominate Leora Brown.
Second. I mean, I really
Brown,
wanted it.
sorry. I apologize for that, as somebody whose name gets mispronounced all the time.
I get Leroy Brown, so please don't worry about it.
Leroy Brown.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Leora, do you accept?
I do.
Shocking. Anybody else interested in a nomination? Seeing none.
No, I
I think Leora is an excellent choice.
Same.
And we will just, codify it with a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Leora.
Looking forward to that.
Any time you want to get that paragraph, that'd be
Happy to share it with the committee at the next meeting.
fantastic. All right, superintendent report.
All right, just a few things. Mandy is going to work hard tomorrow and put out a newsletter. Millbury Street, I think it was last week, Millbury Street and North Street put on their winter concerts. Chorus and band students did a great job. Teachers clearly brought out the very best in everyone. As you know, a couple weeks back, we had a very scary and significant auto accident with one of our students driving to the high school. The town responded beautifully. The communication was great with the police and fire. So thank you to everybody on that end. Received great news today that he's doing very, very well, better than expected. Got out of the hospital today and is planning to return to school after February break, maybe even before. So I thought that was the highlight of my day. And then representatives from the Finance Committee reached out to me this morning. We set up a preliminary budget discussion with me and Kathleen on February 26th. And sometime, I'm guessing in March, maybe early March, we'll present the school budget to the Finance Committee. So I'm looking forward to that first step. And that's all I have.
Any questions for Jay?
Has the principal search started yet for the Millbury Street
It has
school?
not.
Okay.
No. Typically, that would be after, any districts that are looking typically do so after February break. That's when the hiring season starts.
Any other questions? Okay, student representatives.
Carnations are being sold at lunch for Valentine's Day by Student Council until February 7th. Senior class trip is to Brownstone Adventure Park. Prom is May 10th. Class dues are due this week, payable in cash or check. And our club is hosting a Cupids and Canvas fundraiser this Friday.
So around March, usually we have course selection. So this is a good time to start thinking about what classes you want to be taking next year. We have a really great guidance department, but additionally, a lot of upperclassmen are always willing to chat about classes they've taken if people have questions. So it's a really great time to start making use of just the school community as a whole. We have the science fair February 25th. And then a reminder that college visits are excused for juniors and seniors if you provide documentation to the main office. So if you're choosing between some colleges right now, or you're a junior and you're trying to think about where you want to apply, make use of that opportunity. And then just a reminder for parents about tutoring and homework club at the middle school. It meets after schools Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and there's tutoring provided for free for middle school students.
That's all.
Thank you so much. As always, you are welcome to stay, and you are welcome to go do your homework. Whatever you choose. Thank you for coming.
Thank you guys.
Future agenda.
Thanks, you too.
Nice break.
Good night.
Our next meeting, we have the budget, the reduction budget again. We'll have a school update from GHS and the GHS Program of Studies. As a reminder to everybody, that meeting will be in room A downstairs, so don't come up here. This room will hopefully be under construction by that point. So this, as soon as we can get back in here, we will, but that sounds like this will be our last meeting in here. for a little while. I know we want to talk about fees, but doing it at the next meeting with everything else that's on there, unless the top item, is that, we can do fees, the reduction budget, the school update, and the program of studies in one meeting, but that is going to be very long. Go ahead.
I feel like though we have to do it before the hearing.
I don't disagree.
You know, maybe we can just chat with Mr. Carney and.
Yeah, I know Kevin wants to be pushed if he could be.
I was just
No.
gonna ask if, we already pushed them once.
Yeah, I know.
I was gonna propose that we push again,
Yeah, I would push that
because,
to add the fees.
yeah, that makes sense to me.
Where are you going to push them, though?
To the next meeting.
Not a lot of,
Because once we do the budget hearing, we won't be talking about the budget at that meeting. That won't be on the agenda. The budget hearing will be at 6:45.
Right.
I don't know what we're gonna talk about with capital. It's probably not gonna be much, and then we'll do our school choice decision, mid-year goals review. I think we could fit the high school in there nicely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I'll ask him.
Tell him he's welcome. Okay. Great, thank you, everybody. Any other thoughts on agenda items?
Can I just go back? They don't need the program of studies approved before class.
He didn't seem in
Do
a
they?
giant rush to
Okay.
do it, but I'll check with him right
And
now.
I mean, also, that's kind of could be moot because we don't even know what, you know, there might not be classes available.
Yeah,
Right there.
There will be class.
No, I'm sorry.
classes at all.
They're adding,
Canceled high school.
I think she got new ones.
Thank you. Let me retract. Let me retract and rephrase.
New offerings.
Only grades K through 2, that's what he said, that's all we care about.
That's going to solve our budget crisis. No, I meant there might be some programs that might not be there, which is very sad, and I don't like it, but I guess we wouldn't know that anyway
The
by the
program of,
25th or the 11th.
The program of study is also on May 13th.
what? Is that because we approve it on the 13th? Like, do you
I
see
don't
it?
know why that's there. No.
Okay. I was confused by
later.
it.
That's not right.
Yeah.
The program of studies is before course selection. I don't
Yeah,
know
it's
why
got to
that's
be,
there.
right.
Thank you, good eyes. I had not noticed that all this time.
Because we never looked that far, really.
Yeah,
Truth.
I did at some point. I missed that.
It's okay.
Okay,
Huh?
great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Next item, approval of minutes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I move that the committee approve the minutes of January 21st, 2025.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Madam Chair.
Financial report.
Sorry, I got real excited.
You're doing good.
I'm ready.
Go.
I mean, like, right, this is my moment to shine. That's all I've got. Madam Chair.
Yes.
I move that the committee approve warrants 30 and 31.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the warrants? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Rebecca. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're one thing.
I feel like you
Do other things.
It's like, I gotta pay attention, to be focused, ready. I was ready. I was ready for it.
Shine in many ways.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, policy.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Before we get in, I wanted to say the policy committee, we weren't able to meet until last night at Monday night. So the policy, we didn't get it to you. So if anybody needs more time, we can certainly move it. It's all second reading, so we were hopeful we could get it in tonight, but we understand if people are like, hey, we didn't have enough time. So if anybody feels like
read
they.
it.
Okay, I know you read it.
Okay, awesome. I wanted to apologize for the.
For the lateness. I
Yeah,
was
the
traveling
lateness.
all last week,
What?
so.
Yeah, that was when we could meet. But we figured we'd give you the option.
But they are second readings. There's nothing brand new here.
Ish. All right, go ahead.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I move the committee accept policy KDCB, district website and social media as a second reading.
Second.
Motion made and seconded.
have made some adjustments to it, which I'd like to discuss in the discussion portion of the.
Yep.
We kind of went back and forth on the commenting, because the MASC recommends that we not have any commenting on district sites or social media accounts. However, we have an entire Facebook page dedicated to Q&A, where we do allow people to post questions, Dr. Cummings answers, and then comments are turned off. So we made adjustments and tweaks. In the second paragraph, you'll see we've rewritten it to say commenting on all district and school sites may be turned off at the site administrator's discretion in line with the legal requirements for public communication. So taking into account that we don't want deliberation, on a Facebook page, basically, of the committee and open meeting law violations. So that is the substantive change to what we discussed last week in this version. Anyone have any questions? Does that all make sense?
Good. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor? Motion carries.
Thanks, guys, and thanks for your feedback on that one last week. Keep
Are we
going.
taking turns, or?
Oh, just go, Leora. You did so well with that.
Oh, God,
It's your time to shine.
I can do it if you want.
Rebecca?
Madam Chair, I move that the committee accept policy KF, community use of school facilities, as a second reading.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
We, as we discussed last time, we combined KF and KF-R, cleaned up basically any redundancies, and this is the second reading of it.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
My only concern with this is I thought that we had stated at the last meeting that we were going to include kind of a link or something in regards to the fee schedule in this, to remind us that we need to look at that.
Oh, just where it says Grafton Public Schools webpage, that would be a hyperlink.
That would be linked.
And it's not in the draft, but it would be a link, yes. That's a
Yeah.
good point.
So, okay, because we didn't bring back the
Not yet.
old.
No, we haven't. That's on the calendar to bring back.
We brought back the one to delete, or we should have.
Yeah, but the old fee schedule, the old KF-R.
It should, where is it? It should have been. We talked about it.
We
Damn
did
it.
talk about it, and it's not here,
What did I do with it?
but it's in
I
the,
must have deleted it. It's on the packet, but it's not in the
that's
packet.
KF-EI.
Yeah, that's
E1.
KF.
Yeah.
We want KF-R.
Yeah, so we did remove it because we combined some
No,
of the language, but did not put in the fee schedule.
no, yeah, but the old KF-R, the one that we had prior to the transfer, the changeover, it wasn't that KFR became this KFR. It was, they weren't the same at all. One was the actual fee schedule.
Right,
So that old KFR,
the fee schedule.
yeah, not the one that was, not the new one in the MASC
Correct.
that you guys, I know that you deleted and
Yep.
combined these two, but the old one.
Right, but I thought we agreed we were not going to put the fee schedule. We're just going to link to the web, put in the policy that it's available on the website and link to it.
Okay, but I mean, it still has to come back, that one, so that we can delete it. Because it's in our old manual.
The old KFR?
Yep, the
Yeah.
old
Okay,
KFR.
I have it
Okay.
right here, Leora. That's fine. That's the easy fix.
Okay.
And when we bring it back, that old KF-R, the fee schedule, because it states it in these policies that we will review that fee schedule.
Yep.
Yeah, we should do it at that time.
So we won't do it at that time because we'll be voting to remove
Well-
it. The fee schedule is on the agenda list.
Where is it on the agenda?
It's on the list for April 8th.
Oh, okay,
So it is there, so we
All
don't
right.
lose track of it.
okay,
And that'll be a permanent fixture. We'll keep that from year to year.
okay.
Yep. Okay. Any further discussion on KF? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor? Motion carries.
Madam Chair,
Yep.
I move that the committee accept policy JEB, entrance age, as a second reading.
Second.
Motion made and seconded.
This has been rewritten with some clarifying language. Thank you to Christy for her recommendations based on her research. And we've updated this to be a little bit more prescriptive and specific about students who might not fall into their fifth birthday falling on or before September 1st, particularly when you look at a grade 1 student who comes into the district who may not be 6 when they start grade 1.
Like transfer students.
Right.
Out of district transfers.
So if they've done kindergarten somewhere else, you have
Okay.
thoughts.
No, something just popped into my head. No, it's fine. I'm not judging anybody. I just thought of something that came up in something I did last week.
Okay.
But it can't be helped.
Okay.
So,
I think the thinking here was to remove the ambiguity around, at the school's discretion and have some specificity around how that's evaluated and not just leave it open-ended.
Yeah, and this falls more with what we actually did have in our, if you went back to the old policies, the old JEB and JEB 1, JEB 1, that's what was stated.
so what is school readiness screening?
These were words that were.
No, I'm just asking.
Oh.
I'm just asking what the committee is interpreting that to mean.
Well, I would say it's social readiness, it's academic readiness, and I mean, I think it does fall to the principals, and that kind of sucks, which we did discuss about maybe not, loving that, but we just had to keep it in.
They do have a shared procedure between the two schools. I think the last time we used it, Doreen Parker was still here, but it's in place.
Okay, that was where I was going with that, because one of the items we discussed at the last meeting was the concern that there be
Yeah.
that there be parity.
Right.
That there be a consistent
Right.
Yep.
Yep, they
metric
definitely have that.
where, and I know we're talking about children, and you can't always, hold them up to a yardstick, but it at least be consistent, so that a parent isn't going to get a different experience depending on which side of that magic line they live. Okay, I'm satisfied. Any other discussion? You know what, I'm going to say it, because if I don't say it, I'm going to regret it later.
Say it.
Proof of age by certified birth certificate. What if they don't have one? We're requiring them to have something that some children may not have.
Yep, that's fair.
What are the requirements, Dr.
What do we do
Cummings?
in that circumstance now, Jeff? You're
something.
you don't know. That's why I'm wondering that
Well,
if we need
maybe
to,
get rid of that.
maybe just say proof of age.
Yeah.
Proof of
Yeah,
age.
yeah.
Great.
Proof of age.
Can we
I
do
think
that
that's
by a?
perfect.
Yeah, get rid of
I
that.
like that a
Thank
lot.
you.
I like that, looks
Yeah,
good
I think
catch.
it's-
I'll go into why a little bit later, but yeah,
Yeah, get rid of
No,
that.
you're right. I
Yep,
mean,
that's fine.
I don't know,
Okay.
somebody could have,
Yeah, whatever.
yeah, lots of reasons you
Get
might
rid of
not
it.
have one.
okay.
Up until like last year, mine was not certified. It was some weird piece of paper I had from New Jersey, like,
Yeah, you didn't have the raised seal on it. You
No.
were born in New Jersey? Uh-huh.
yeah, I'm a Jersey girl,
Really?
South Jersey.
Ew.
It's like she's an alien.
Don't mess with me.
We're gonna have to fight. Can we fight now? Go Eagles. All right, cool. So we just did that change, we can do that,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
everybody agrees, and.
Yep, perfect.
Yeah, look, I
like
crossed
that.
it out.
Any other any other discussion?
Exist
not
anymore,
even
it's
on my
gone
line,
there.
yeah.
It's gone.
All right.
I love it.
Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Excellent.
Thank you, Amy.
Welcome.
Yeah, good catch, thanks, appreciate that.
Yeah. Oh, and then we had,
I didn't put it in.
oh, you didn't?
It's fine, it's a
Fine,
second.
it's-
Oh,
Do it anyway.
wait, what?
Oh, the delete.
Oh, the
Yeah, delete.
deletion.
The deletion's fine. It's the second time around, we can do it.
Yeah.
If you have the code, let's just do it.
All right, cool.
Okay, Madam Chair.
Let's not delete the wrong policy.
I won't.
Go.
I recommend that the committee vote to delete policy KF-E1, which is basically a copy of the application for school facility use.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Oh, you're saying just because you didn't put it in the packet?
Yeah.
No, that's fine.
No, it's a different policy.
already deleted.
Yeah, we already deleted it, so yeah, we're just deleting it again.
found it.
Yep, awesome. All right,
That will
all
make
those in favor?
Yeah.
Delete.
All right, delete, done.
Right.
Great. Thank you
Thanks.
for your hard work.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for my time to shine.
You did shine.
Thanks for coming back from your trip in time to do the meeting. We appreciate it. All right, member reports. Does anybody besides me have a member report?
I have a quick one.
Go ahead.
I just wanted, I'm sure you all got this, but I'm going to try to be more of an MASC rep for the committee. There's a learning lunch this Friday from the Student Opportunity Act. I have registered. If you didn't get it, let me know. Also, it's by, he came, I've listened, Colin Jones, and he came to my session, remember him, and the one before, he's done this, he's really smart, and I think it might be helpful just to hear where they're at and hopefully get some, be great to just get a little bit of good news from government. And also, there should have been a survey sent out by MASC. Again, if you didn't get it, let me know. Just asking what you're looking for from the organization.
I think I deleted that by mistake.
Okay, well, if you don't want to, if you need it again,
I would love it. I think I
let me
deleted it because I
know
thought it
if-
was spam.
yeah, it's good. It's all, Jason's amazing.
Found
Yeah.
it today, yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm assuming you guys all get this,
Yep.
so I don't usually bring it up, but I was excited about that one.
Yep, got it.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I attended another VEX competition, and this one was very exciting because Mr. Carney came, which I love Mr. Carney. And I didn't realize that we were in Dr. Cummings' old building where he used to be principal. And Mr. Carney was telling me all about that and how his wife was principal in that building. It was so much fun. And then today I went to Westboro High School where the middle school math team was competing, and they won first place.
Yes.
For them.
Awesome, rock on.
Oh, I
So
would
that
have liked
was
to have gone to that.
Great for them. They'll be going on because of that. Mr. Koss was very excited. He was actually hoping for a fourth place win because then we wouldn't have to move on.
Now.
It's gonna be a whole day. So we've got that, and I won't be able to make the lunch on Friday because I just was told that I am running Colonial Day at
Hey.
Millbury Street School. And if you've never seen me in my colonial outfit, that is quite a fun thing. So
I'm mostly interested in the shoes that you wear under the. Are
Oh,
they-
they're like spikes.
Oh, okay, so they're not, all right,
Not colonial at all.
not authentic. Gotcha. Well, you enjoy that. I miss Colonial Day. That was one of my favorite things.
Did my time in a dress.
Just run the candle making, that's it.
They have a whole hat
They
thing
cut that, yeah. We
We
never
had a
did that.
fire the year I ran it.
We never did
on
that.
purpose.
Yes.
They look all the-
So my committee report is, I'm going to say it again, we're going to be in room G, or A, downstairs. Why did I say
I'm gonna
G?
need a reminder.
This room is going to be under construction. And so for those of you who are watching the recording at home, or the live stream at home, if you are encountering some scratchiness, I did just go in the booth a little while ago and I listened to the feed that's being recorded for playback, and it is okay. So hopefully, I know we've had our share of audio issues this past year in this room, and hopefully the construction that's going to be taking place is going to be replacing a whole bunch of equipment that will take care of that problem moving forward. So last Friday, I attended a Zoom meeting for school committee members, knowing your students' rights, specifically with regards to what's going on right now with immigration, which is why the bit of the birth certificate popped up. And they did recommend a thorough review of your policies around what information you collect from students, because anything we have can then be eventually, over time, through the courts, subpoenaed. And it was a very interesting session. They did not record it, which I was a little sad about. I was hoping they would, and I'm sure they had their reasons to not record it. But the Attorney General did put out a statement about the Commonwealth and how the Commonwealth remains committed to protecting our students and their rights under FERPA. And it was very comforting to know that nobody is going to show up at our school and be able to get in to the building without an actual bench warrant.
Yep.
They can't just come and say, "Hi, we're from the government. We want to talk to the student." And I say that now on camera because I know that we've had some families that have been very worried. I've had a couple parents reach out to me personally, and I've reassured them as best I can. But I am just one person, and I also don't work in a school. So I attended the session to make sure that my facts were right. They are. Our staff's doing a great job. I'm sure it's a very stressful time. And so I just ask everybody to please be patient and calm. And if you do hear rumors and things, please go to the source. Please don't go to social media and start posting horrible stories with fake pictures. And we just don't need that right now. And that's happening in other districts, and we don't need it. So that's my plea to you. And thank you to all of our teachers and all of our staff who are on the front line with this stuff every single day in big ways and small. That is my committee report. We do not have any correspondence that I'm aware of. We do not need executive session. Is there any other business that can come before the board at this time? Seeing none, I declare the meeting adjourned. Good night, Grafton.
Good night.